Sumeria in southern Mesopotamia.
They said it was just another tomb, but when the seal cracked open, scientists stumbled backward in horror. Inside wasn't human. The body, impossibly preserved for thousands of years, had features that don't exist in nature. Then they found the inscriptions. The last Anunnaki king. When they ran the DNA, 3 senior researchers quit on the spot. One whispered, "We were never supposed to find this." World governments are now scrambling to hide what they discovered. But leaked footage has already surfaced. What they're hiding will shatter everything you believe about human existence. The Sumerian civilization emerged around 4500 BCE in the Fertile Plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in what is now southern Iraq. This region, known as Mesopotamia, would become the birthplace of what we recognize as civilization. By 3200 BCE, the Sumerians had developed cuneiform, a sophisticated writing system that used wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets. These weren't simple pictographs, but a complex script capable of expressing abstract ideas, legal concepts, and detailed narratives. The development of writing alone would have been remarkable enough, but the Sumerians didn't stop there. They created intricate irrigation networks that transformed arid land into productive farmland, built massive stepped pyramids called ziggurats that dominated their city skylines, and established structured legal systems that would influence law codes for centuries to come. Among the most notable Sumerian contributions was the work of Enheduanna, who lived around 2300 BCE and is recognized as the world's first author whose name we actually know. She was a high priestess who composed hymns and poems that have survived to this day. Then there's the Epic of Gilgamesh, a narrative about a legendary king that predates Homer's Iliad and Odyssey by more than 1,000 years. These aren't primitive stories scratched onto cave walls. They're sophisticated literary works with complex themes, character development, and philosophical depth. The Sumerians clearly possessed advanced intellectual capabilities and a rich cultural life. Archaeological work over the past century and a half has provided substantial evidence of Sumerian sophistication. In 1922, British archaeologist Leonard Woolley began excavating the ancient city of Ur, one of Sumeria's most important urban centers. What he found in the royal cemetery was nothing short of extraordinary. There were elaborate pieces of jewelry, musical instruments, including lyres decorated with bullheads, and the famous Standard of Ur, a decorated box that depicts scenes of war and peace in intricate detail. These artifacts reveal a society with clear social hierarchies, international trade networks, and complex religious practices. Similar discoveries have been made at other Sumerian sites, including Uruk, Eridu, and Nippur, each adding to our understanding of this remarkable civilization. The clay tablets recovered from these sites now fill the collections of major museums like the British Museum and the Louvre. Many of these tablets contain practical records such as commercial transactions, medical prescriptions, and administrative documents. These mundane records have been invaluable for understanding daily life in ancient Sumer. But other tablets contain something different. They tell stories about the Anunnaki, beings who the Sumerians claimed came down from the heavens and played a direct role in human affairs. These texts describe a time before a great flood, when gods and humans lived in close proximity. Narratives that bear striking similarities to later stories found in the Bible and the Quran about an ancient world that was destroyed by divine judgment. This is where things get interesting from an academic perspective. Scholars readily accept Sumerian records about grain storage, land ownership, and medical treatments. The mathematical and astronomical knowledge preserved in these tablets is studied and admired. Yet when the same tablets discuss human origins or describe the actions of the Anunnaki, these accounts are categorized as mythology and largely set aside. Samuel Noah Kramer, one of the most respected scholars of Sumerian language and culture in the 20th century, spent decades translating these ancient texts. He acknowledged that the Sumerians themselves claimed to have received their knowledge from the gods. Documents like the Sumerian king list describe kingship and social order as having descended from the heavens, a theme that appears repeatedly throughout Sumerian literature. What's particularly noteworthy is the consistency of these accounts. The Sumerians weren't vague about their beliefs. They provided names, genealogies, and specific details about the Anunnaki and their activities. The texts describe councils of gods making decisions, disagreements between different divine figures, and direct interventions in human society. These aren't abstract symbolic stories. They read more like historical records, albeit ones describing events that challenge our current understanding of the past. This selective acceptance of Sumerian records creates what might be called an interpretive paradox. On one hand, modern civilization acknowledges an enormous debt to Sumerian innovation. Our 60-minute hour and 60-second minute come from Sumerian mathematics. Many of our legal concepts can be traced back to Sumerian law codes. The very concept of the city as an organized political and economic unit owes much to Sumerian urban planning. We trust their engineering, their mathematics, their astronomy, and their administrative systems. Yet we dismiss their cosmology and their accounts of human origins as fantasy, even though these accounts were recorded with the same care and on the same types of tablets as their other knowledge. Some researchers have pointed out that this bias might reflect modern assumptions more than ancient realities. If we were to approach Sumerian texts without preconceived notions about what is and isn't possible, we might arrive at very different conclusions about human history. The standard narrative of human development describes a gradual, linear progression from simple hunter-gatherer societies to complex civilizations over tens of thousands of years. But recent discoveries have complicated this neat timeline. Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site in modern Turkey, dates to around 9600 BCE and features massive stone pillars arranged in circles, some weighing up to 20 tons. The site required organized labor, sophisticated planning, and advanced stoneworking techniques. Yet it predates the supposed invention of agriculture by thousands of years. This pushes back the timeline of human capability and organization in ways that align more closely with some ancient accounts, including those of the Sumerians. Modern genetic research has also revealed unexpected complexities in human ancestry. Studies have shown that human genetic diversity doesn't always match what we would expect from a simple, gradual evolution. There have been what geneticists call admixture events, periods when different human populations interbred in ways that created sudden changes in the genetic record. While mainstream science explains these through natural evolutionary processes, they do represent moments of rapid change rather than gradual development. The question becomes whether ancient peoples like the Sumerians might have preserved memories of such transformative periods in their cultural narratives, even if the details became mythologized over time. The Sumerians themselves made no distinction between their practical knowledge and their spiritual or historical beliefs. To them, it was all part of the same reality. They recorded commercial transactions, astronomical observations, and stories about the Anunnaki with equal seriousness and attention to detail. The division between these categories is something we've imposed from our modern perspective. Perhaps the real question isn't whether the Sumerians were right about the Anunnaki, but rather why we've decided that ancient peoples couldn't be reliable witnesses to their own history when it contradicts our current models. The archaeological evidence proves they were capable of sophisticated thought, careful record-keeping, and remarkable achievements. Their tablets have survived for thousands of years, offering us a window into the distant past. What exactly that window shows us, and how literally we should interpret what we see, remains one of the most intriguing questions in the study of human origins. The story of how these ancient Sumerian tablets came to light is almost as remarkable as their content. In 1849, British archaeologists began excavating sites in Mesopotamia, with Austin Henry Layard and his team making particularly significant discoveries at Nineveh, the ancient Assyrian capital. While Nineveh itself was an Assyrian city, many of the cuneiform tablets found there actually originated from earlier Sumerian cities like Nippur, Uruk, and Eridu. These were the places where civilization first took root, and the documents recovered from these sites would fundamentally challenge our understanding of ancient history. Among the most significant finds were tablets dating back to approximately the 24th century BCE, making them some of the earliest examples of human writing ever discovered. The script itself, cuneiform, consists of wedge-shaped impressions made in soft clay that was then baked hard, preserving the text for millennia. These weren't just administrative records or simple lists. The tablets contained elaborate cosmological accounts, genealogies tracing lines of gods and kings, detailed descriptions of how humanity was created, and narratives about a catastrophic flood that predated the biblical story of Noah by over 1,000 years. The text introduced readers to a complex pantheon of deities collectively known as the Anunnaki. What stands out immediately when reading these accounts is how different they are from later religious texts. The Sumerians didn't describe a single, all-powerful creator deity working alone. Instead, they wrote about councils of gods who debated, disagreed, and even conducted what sounds remarkably like experimentation. The text mentions something called the Father of all beginnings, which seems to represent an abstract philosophical concept of a prime source of existence. But when it came to the actual creation of humanity, multiple gods were involved, acting more like a committee or a team of scientists than an omnipotent singular force. The Sumerian creation narrative presents a particularly intriguing alternative to the familiar story of Adam and Eve. In these ancient texts, the first humans are called Adamu, which translates simply as man, and Tiamat, meaning mother of life. The similarity between Adamu and Adam is striking and unlikely to be coincidental. But the method of creation described in the Sumerian accounts is what really captures attention. According to these texts, the god Enki, who was associated with wisdom and water, led the creation process. The tablets describe how the Anunnaki combined what they called the essence of a god, sometimes referred to as the blood of the gods, with clay taken from the earth. This wasn't presented as a magical or instantaneous process, but rather as something that required effort, planning, and specific materials. Even more interesting is the Sumerian description of Eden, or as they called it, Eden. In the biblical account, the Garden of Eden is often imagined as a paradise existing outside normal space and time, a perfect realm where the first humans lived in innocent communion with God. The Sumerian texts paint a very different picture. Eden was described as an actual geographic location, a fertile plain in Mesopotamia, where the gods established their settlements and managed agricultural projects. It wasn't primarily a paradise for humans, but rather a working estate where the gods lived, and where humans were created specifically to perform labor, relieving the gods of the burden of tending the fields themselves. This practical, almost mundane description of creation stands in sharp contrast to the mystical accounts in later religious texts. The Sumerians used phrases like "those who from the heavens" came to earth repeatedly when describing the Anunnaki. While many scholars interpret this as purely poetic or mythological language, the consistency and specificity of these descriptions have led some researchers to wonder whether the Sumerians might have been recording something they understood to be literally true, even if we struggle to interpret it from our modern perspective. Archaeological evidence has provided substantial support for the antiquity and significance of these tablets. Between 1889 and 1900, the University of Pennsylvania conducted extensive excavations at Nippur under the direction of John Punnett Peters and John Henry Haynes. They uncovered vast libraries containing thousands of cuneiform tablets, including administrative documents, religious hymns, and mythological texts. One particularly famous find was a tablet containing the Sumerian king list, dated to around 2100 BCE. This document records the reigns of kings who ruled before the Great Flood, and some of these reigns are listed as lasting thousands of years. One king supposedly ruled for 28,800 years, another for 36,000 years. These extraordinary numbers echo similar claims in the biblical book of Genesis, where the patriarchs before the flood are said to have lived for centuries rather than normal human lifespans. the astronomical knowledge preserved in Sumerian texts is equally remarkable. The Venus tablet of Ammisaduqa, for instance, contains detailed observations of the planet Venus over a 21-year period. The level of precision and consistency in these observations suggests a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics that seems almost out of place for an early Bronze Age society. How did the Sumerians develop such advanced astronomical knowledge? According to their own accounts, this knowledge, like their writing and agricultural techniques, came from the Anunnaki. Scholars have spent more than a century translating and analyzing these texts. Researchers like Samuel Noah Kramer, Thorkild Jacobson, and Stephanie Daly dedicated their careers to understanding Sumerian literature and culture. Their work revealed remarkable continuities between Sumerian stories and later religious texts. The flood narrative, for instance, appears in Sumerian texts well before it shows up in the Bible. The themes of divine creation, human purpose, and cosmic order that run through Sumerian literature would later be adapted and incorporated into Hebrew, Greek, and even Hindu traditions. Yet despite acknowledging these connections, mainstream scholarship has generally been reluctant to engage with the more challenging implications of what the Sumerians were saying. Kramer himself noted the clear parallels between Sumerian flood narratives and the story of Noah, but he stopped short of suggesting that the Anunnaki might have been anything other than mythological constructs. This caution is understandable from an academic perspective, but it does raise questions about how we interpret ancient sources. The linguistic evidence alone is provocative. In the Hebrew Bible, the word most commonly translated as God is Elohim. What many people don't realize is that Elohim is actually a plural noun. A more literal translation would be gods rather than God. This has led to considerable theological debate, but it also suggests that early Hebrew texts, like the Sumerian ones before them, may have originally described multiple divine beings rather than a single deity. The monotheistic interpretation that dominates Judaism, Christianity, and Islam today might represent a later theological development, a simplification of earlier, more complex religious traditions. The discovery of these tablets in the mid-19th century came at a culturally significant moment. Western society was in the midst of constructing a particular narrative about human history, one that emphasized linear progress, human exceptionalism, and a singular transcendent God. The biblical narrative provided a framework that fit comfortably with these ideas. Archaeological discoveries were valued when they confirmed or illuminated biblical accounts, but findings that contradicted or complicated the accepted story were often marginalized or reinterpreted to fit existing models. The Sumerian tablets presented exactly this kind of challenge. They predated the Bible, contained similar stories but with significant differences, and described a very different kind of divine intervention in human affairs. Some researchers, most notably Zecharia Sitchin, took a more literal approach to interpreting these texts. Sitchin's work, beginning with his book The 12th Planet, published in 1976, proposed that the Anunnaki were not mythological at all, but rather extraterrestrial beings from a distant planet called Nibiru. According to Sitchin's interpretation of the Sumerian texts, Nibiru is a massive planet with an elongated elliptical orbit that brings it into the inner solar system approximately every 3,600 years. The Anunnaki supposedly came to Earth around 445,000 years ago from this distant world, seeking gold to repair their planet's failing atmosphere. While mainstream academics have largely rejected Sitchin's theories, his work raised important questions about how we read ancient texts and what assumptions we bring to that reading. The idea that the Anunnaki needed gold is particularly interesting when considered alongside both ancient evidence and modern science. The royal tombs of Ur, excavated by Leonard Woolley in the 1920s, contained an astonishing quantity of gold artifacts. Crowns, jewelry, ritual objects, and decorative items made from gold filled the burial chambers of Sumerian royalty. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, but so was the sheer amount of gold, suggesting it held special significance beyond mere decoration. Sumerian texts frequently mention mining operations in a place called the Abzu, a term associated with the underground and linked to the god Enki. While this is often interpreted symbolically, some researchers have noted that these descriptions sound remarkably like accounts of actual mining activities. Modern technology has found numerous uses for gold that go far beyond jewelry. Gold is an excellent conductor of electricity and reflects infrared radiation with exceptional efficiency. These properties make it invaluable in space technology. The James Webb Space Telescope, for instance, uses gold-coated mirrors because gold provides the best reflective surface for the infrared wavelengths the telescope observes. If an advanced civilization did need to create some kind of atmospheric shield or reflective layer, gold would actually be an excellent material to use. Whether this represents genuine ancient knowledge or merely an interesting coincidence remains open to interpretation. The question of human origins has also become more complex in recent years. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, appeared relatively suddenly in the archaeological record around 300,000 years ago. We have larger brains, more sophisticated tool use, and greater cognitive abilities than earlier hominid species. Paleoanthropologists have traditionally explained this through natural selection, but the speed of this transformation has puzzled some researchers. There's even a term for it in the field, the Great Leap Forward, referring to the relatively rapid development of human cognitive and cultural capabilities. Could there have been some external factor that accelerated this development? The Sumerian text suggests there was, and they were quite specific about what that factor was: deliberate intervention by the Anunnaki in human evolution. According to the ancient Sumerian tablets, the Anunnaki didn't simply visit Earth and leave. They established permanent settlements and created an entire infrastructure to support their operations. The texts place their arrival at roughly 445,000 years ago, a time frame that extends far beyond recorded human history as we typically understand it. Their primary objective, as preserved in documents like the Atrahasis and the Enuma Elish, was to extract gold from the earth to address a critical environmental problem on their home planet, Nibiru. To accomplish this enormous task, they needed to establish bases, organize labor forces, and create supply chains, much like any large-scale industrial operation. The first settlement they built was called Arid, which translates to home in the far distance. This site, located in what would become the marshlands near the Persian Gulf, was later known as Eridu. The Sumerians regarded Eridu with special reverence, considering it the oldest city on Earth and the first place where kingship descended from the heavens. The Sumerian King List, a document that chronicles the succession of kings, begins its account at Eridu, explicitly stating that this was where civilization began. Archaeological excavations at the site have revealed evidence of sophisticated urban planning dating back to at least the 6th millennium BCE, with remains of temples, irrigation channels, and organized residential areas that suggest a level of complexity unusual for such an early period. The god Enki was said to be in charge of this first settlement. Described as the chief engineer of the Anunnaki's Earth operations, Enki oversaw what the texts call Earth Station 1, coordinating mining activities and managing the logistics of resource extraction. The texts indicate that the primary mining operations took place in a region called the Abzu, traditionally associated with underground places and often linked by some researchers to southern Africa, where some of the world's oldest and deepest gold mines have been found. However, the Anunnaki themselves didn't perform the hard labor. For the actual digging, canal construction, and day-to-day mining work, they employed a workforce described in the texts as the Igigi. The Igigi are often characterized in Sumerian literature as younger gods or divine servants, a sort of lower tier in the celestial hierarchy. The texts describe them as being assigned the most difficult and exhausting tasks, working in harsh conditions to extract the resources the Anunnaki needed. For what the tablets suggest was an extended period, possibly tens of thousands of years, the Igigi performed this grueling labor without complaint. But eventually, the situation reached a breaking point. Around 300,000 years ago, according to the timeline suggested by these texts, the Igigi staged what can only be described as a rebellion. The Atrahasis provides a dramatic account of this revolt. The text describes how the Igigi, pushed beyond endurance by relentless work, set fire to their tools in an act of defiance. They then marched to Nippur, another major Anunnaki settlement, and surrounded the residence of Enlil, one of the most powerful Anunnaki leaders. The confrontation was serious enough that it threatened the entire operation on Earth. Without the Igigi labor force, the Anunnaki's mission would fail. They needed a solution, and they needed it quickly. This crisis led to one of the most significant moments described in Sumerian literature. Enki proposed creating an entirely new type of being, one that could replace the Igigi as workers, but would be specifically designed for this purpose. The texts describe a gathering of the gods in the Abzu, where Enki worked alongside a birth goddess named Ninhursag, also called Mami. Together they conducted what the tablets describe as a biological experiment. They took what they called the essence of an Anunnaki, which some researchers interpret as genetic material, and combined it with the clay of the earth. This clay, according to various interpretations, symbolically represented the existing hominids on the planet, likely Homo erectus or a similar species. The result of this process was a hybrid, being the text called the Lulu Amelu, meaning mixed worker. This prototype was named Adamu, and according to the Sumerian account, this being became the template for modern humans. The similarity between the Sumerian Adamu and the biblical Adam is impossible to ignore, suggesting a direct line of transmission between these much older Mesopotamian accounts and the later Hebrew texts. What makes the Sumerian version particularly striking is its scientific tone. Rather than describing an instantaneous magical creation, the texts present a methodical process involving specific materials and procedures, almost like a laboratory protocol. Archaeological evidence at sites like Eridu lends some support to the antiquity of these stories. The discoveries there show urban development and organized society stretching back thousands of years before writing was supposedly invented. The site includes a ziggurat dedicated to Enki, demonstrating the central role this deity played in Sumerian religious life. The sophistication of the irrigation systems and the complexity of the city plan suggest knowledge and capabilities that required either a very long period of gradual development or, as the Sumerians themselves claimed, instruction from an outside source. Genetic research has added interesting dimensions to this discussion. Studies of mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down through the maternal line, have identified what scientists call mitochondrial Eve, a woman who lived somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 years ago, and from whom all modern humans are descended. This represents a genetic bottleneck, a point where human diversity narrowed significantly before expanding again. While mainstream science explains this through population dynamics and migration patterns, the existence of such a bottleneck does align with the idea of a relatively recent and possibly sudden change in the human population. The language the Sumerians used to describe their relationship with the gods is also revealing. The Sumerian word for worship, avad, literally translates to work for. This suggests that the Sumerians understood their primary duty to the gods not as spiritual devotion in the modern sense, but as labor and service. Their religious practices were built around this concept. Temples weren't just places of prayer, but economic centers where goods were collected, stored, and redistributed. The temple complexes at Ur, Uruk, and Eridu functioned as administrative hubs, managing agricultural production, craft workshops, and trade networks. This practical, almost contractual relationship between humans and gods differs markedly from later religious concepts of worship based on faith, love, or fear. However, the creation of humans as workers wasn't the end of the story. Over time, according to the texts, some of the Anunnaki began taking human women as partners. These unions produced offspring known as the Nephilim, a term that appears in both Mesopotamian texts and in the biblical book of Genesis. The Hebrew word Nephilim comes from a root meaning to fall, which some scholars interpret as fallen ones, though others suggest it means those who cause others to fall. Either way, these beings represented something between fully divine Anunnaki and purely human laborers. The Epic of Gilgamesh and the Book of Giants, another ancient text, describe these Nephilim as giants possessing extraordinary strength and abilities. Genesis refers to them as mighty men who were of old, men of renown, suggesting they held positions of power and influence in ancient society. The Sumerian king list includes rulers with impossibly long lifespans, which some researchers believe might be references to these hybrid beings. King Ululim, for instance, is said to have ruled Eridu for 28,800 years. While this is obviously not a standard human lifespan, it might represent a cultural memory of a time when rulers were different from ordinary humans, possibly these Nephilim hybrids. This interbreeding between Anunnaki and humans created significant tension among the Anunnaki leadership. Enlil, who held a position of supreme authority in the Anunnaki hierarchy, viewed these developments with alarm. While Enki had been the architect behind creating humans as a labor force, he seems to have been more sympathetic to humanity and more willing to allow these closer relationships. Enlil, however, saw the proliferation of Nephilim and the general increase in human population as a threat. The texts suggest he worried that humans were becoming too numerous, too powerful, and too independent. They were no longer content to simply serve as workers for the gods. Archaeological evidence from this period, roughly between 3000 and 2000 BCE, shows rapid urban expansion throughout Mesopotamia. Cities grew larger and more complex, population density increased, social structures became more sophisticated. From Enlil's perspective, according to the texts, this represented a loss of control. The solution he eventually decided upon was drastic: a great flood that would wipe out most of humanity and allow the Anunnaki to essentially reset their experiment. The flood narrative appears across numerous ancient cultures, but the Sumerian version is the oldest we've discovered. In their account, the flood wasn't simply divine punishment for human wickedness, as it's often portrayed in religious texts. Instead, it was a calculated decision by Enlil to solve what he saw as a population problem. The texts indicate that not all the Anunnaki agreed with this plan. Enki, in particular, opposed it and secretly warned a human named Atrahasis, whose story closely parallels the biblical Noah. Enki instructed Atrahasis to build a large boat and save himself, his family, and representatives of animal species. The timing of this flood, based on archaeological evidence of catastrophic flooding in Mesopotamia, appears to coincide with a period around 2900 BCE. Leonard Woolley and Max Mallowan, during their excavations in the region, discovered thick layers of water-deposited sediment separating different cultural levels at multiple sites, suggesting a massive flood event that disrupted civilizations across the region. Whether this was the flood described in the ancient texts, a natural disaster that inspired the stories, or some combination of both, remains a matter of debate. The texts also connect the flood to the approach of Nibiru, the Anunnaki home planet. According to these accounts, Nibiru's passage through the inner solar system every 3,600 years caused various cosmic disturbances. These included increased solar activity, gravitational anomalies, and geological instabilities on Earth. The texts describe observations of unusual solar behavior, including increased sunspots and solar flares, phenomena that would have been visible to ancient astronomers. These solar disturbances supposedly triggered a cascade of effects, including a weakening of Earth's magnetic field, rising temperatures, melting ice caps, and ultimately catastrophic sea level rise. Modern science has documented that Earth's magnetic field isn't constant. Paleomagnetic studies show that the magnetic poles have shifted position multiple times throughout Earth's history, and there have been brief periods called geomagnetic excursions, where the field weakened dramatically. While these events occurred on different timescales than the Sumerian texts suggest, they demonstrate that rapid environmental changes driven by cosmic or geological factors are indeed possible. Ice core samples from Greenland and Antarctica show evidence of sudden climate fluctuations that cause dramatic changes in relatively short periods, supporting the idea that catastrophic environmental shifts have occurred in the past. The aftermath of the flood required rebuilding civilization from scratch. The texts describe how the surviving humans, with guidance from certain Anunnaki who had opposed the destruction, re-established cities, codified new laws, and created religious practices designed to maintain better relationships with the gods. The rise of ziggurats throughout Mesopotamia following this period can be seen as humanity's attempt to reconnect with the divine realm and prevent another catastrophe. These massive temple structures, literally reaching toward the heavens, symbolize the renewed covenant between humans and gods. The implications of the Sumerian narrative extend far beyond ancient history and touch on fundamental questions about human origins, development, and our place in the universe. If we take these accounts seriously, even as cultural memories of real events rather than literal historical records, they present a radically different picture from both mainstream scientific models and traditional religious teachings. This alternative framework challenges assumptions that have shaped Western thought for centuries and forces us to reconsider what we think we know about how humanity came to be. The conventional scientific narrative describes human evolution as a gradual process spanning millions of years. According to this model, our ancestors slowly developed larger brains, more sophisticated tool use, and increasingly complex social behaviors through natural selection and random genetic mutations. The fossil record provides support for this view, with discoveries like Australopithecus afarensis, the famous Lucy skeleton dated to approximately 3.2 million years ago, showing an intermediate stage between earlier apes and modern humans. Subsequent species like Homo habilis and Homo erectus demonstrate progressive increases in brain size and technological capability over vast stretches of time. However, the Sumerian texts propose something quite different. They describe a sudden intervention that rapidly accelerated human development, creating a discontinuity in what should have been a smooth evolutionary progression. This intervention, according to the tablets, involved direct genetic manipulation by the Anunnaki, producing beings with capabilities far beyond their evolutionary predecessors. Interestingly, the archaeological record does show some puzzling features that don't fit neatly into the gradualist model. The appearance of modern human behavior, including sophisticated art, complex tool-making, and symbolic thinking, seems to emerge relatively suddenly around 50,000 to 40,000 years ago in what anthropologists sometimes call the Great Leap Forward, or the Upper Paleolithic Revolution. The technological achievements of the Sumerians themselves raise questions about knowledge transmission. By 3500 BCE, Sumerian cities like Uruk and Eridu featured advanced irrigation systems, the potter's wheel, the wagon wheel, sophisticated metallurgy, and complex architectural techniques. These innovations didn't appear gradually, but seemed to emerge as a package, almost as if someone had provided a blueprint. The Sumerians attributed this knowledge directly to their gods, claiming that civilization itself was a gift from the Anunnaki. While mainstream archaeology explains these developments through cultural evolution and human ingenuity, the rapid appearance of so many innovations in such a concentrated area does seem remarkable. The religious implications of the Sumerian accounts are equally significant. Rather than describing a single omnipotent creator, these texts present a polytheistic system with multiple gods who possess distinct personalities, competing agendas, and very human-like flaws. They argued, made mistakes, and sometimes worked at cross purposes. The creation of humanity wasn't portrayed as the centerpiece of a divine plan, but rather as a practical solution to a labor shortage. This perspective differs fundamentally from the monotheistic traditions that dominate modern religious thought in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, where humanity is created in God's image and holds a special place in creation. Scholarly opinion on these matters remains deeply divided. Samuel Noah Kramer, whose translations of Sumerian texts in the 20th century made them accessible to modern readers, regarded these documents as among the most important historical records ever discovered. His work revealed the sophistication of Sumerian thought and the complexity of their literary tradition. However, Kramer interpreted the gods as mythological figures, symbolic representations of natural forces, and social structures, rather than accounts of real beings. He saw the texts as valuable for understanding ancient thought patterns and cultural development, but not as literal history. Zecharia Sitchin took the opposite approach. In his series of books beginning with the 12th planet in 1976, Sitchin argued for a literal interpretation of the Sumerian accounts. He proposed that the Anunnaki were actual extraterrestrial visitors who came to Earth from the planet Nibiru and genetically engineered modern humans by combining their own DNA with that of existing hominids. Sitchin's work sparked enormous interest and debate, creating a cultural phenomenon that continues today. While academic scholars have largely rejected his theories, pointing to issues with his translations and interpretations, his ideas have forced a broader conversation about how we read ancient texts and what possibilities we're willing to consider. Recent genetic discoveries have added unexpected complexity to questions of human origins. The revelation that modern humans carry DNA from Neanderthals and Denisovans, extinct hominid species, proves that interbreeding between different human-like species did occur. Most people of European and Asian descent carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. This demonstrates that human evolution wasn't a simple linear progression, but involved mixing between different populations. While scientists explain this through natural evolutionary processes, it does establish that hybridization played a role in creating modern humans. The Anunnaki hypothesis extends this concept further, suggesting that one of these hybridization events might have involved beings from outside Earth entirely. The precision with which Sumerians constructed their buildings and planned their cities also suggests advanced knowledge. The mathematical and astronomical expertise required to build ziggurats, align structures with celestial events, and manage complex irrigation networks points to a sophisticated understanding of engineering principles. The invention of cuneiform writing allowed them to record detailed information and maintain administrative systems of remarkable complexity. These weren't primitive people struggling with basic survival. They created one of history's first truly advanced civilizations, complete with literature, law, trade, and organized religion. The question ultimately comes down to interpretation and what evidence we're willing to accept. The Sumerian tablets exist. The translations, while debated in their finer points, generally agree on the broad outlines of what these texts say. The Sumerians clearly believed they were recording true accounts of their past and their relationship with beings they called the Anunnaki. They were sophisticated enough to develop writing, mathematics, and complex social systems, yet we dismiss their explanations of human origins as fantasy, while accepting their other contributions as foundational to civilization. This selective credibility might say more about our modern assumptions than about what actually happened in humanity's distant past. Whether the Anunnaki were gods, extraterrestrial visitors, symbolic representations of natural forces, or something else entirely, the Sumerian texts continue to challenge us to think carefully about where we came from and what shaped us into what we are today.